Hello everyone, welcome to the series summarizing the novel Lord of the Mysteries on the AniMonolith channel. Continuation of previous parts, Klein accompanies old Neil to his home to learn about performing magical rituals. Neil prepares a debt-clearing ritual, explaining mystical practices and emphasizing safety by invoking only recognized deities like the Evernight goddess. He details the symbolism in the ritual, including the use of candles, sigils, and ancient Hermes language, highlighting that rituals must use precise symbols and items to channel energy safely. Neil demonstrates the ritual, calling on spiritual and natural forces to address his debt without resorting to harmful practices. Klein is intrigued but skeptical about the ritual's effectiveness, especially as Neil claims the debt will resolve itself through unknown means. After performing a series of mysterious and strange actions to erase his debt at the black market, old Neil quickly shifted the conversation to studying magical rituals, as if trying to escape Klein's suspicion. Naturally, as a student, Klein promptly responded to Neil's request. He posed questions about details in the magical rituals that he didn't fully understand and received thorough explanations from old Neil. For instance, Klein learned that there were rules for reciting incantations, as long as the key requirements were met and the Hermes language was used to clearly express the core idea, minor details could develop more freely. However, it was crucial to remember that blasphemous or disrespectful words were forbidden when reciting an incantation. The mystical studies session between the two continued until noon. Then Neil proactively ended the lesson, stating it was time to return to Zutland. Speaking of Zutland, old Neil recalled that he had to skip breakfast this morning due to being busy gathering the necessary items and tools for practicing magical rituals. Hearing this, Klein couldn't help but laugh because old Neil gave off the impression that he was quite hungry. Thinking about food, Klein asked Neil why he didn't have a cook or maid to handle meals at home. This was because Neil had previously revealed that his weekly salary was £12, a sum sufficient to hire help for household chores. But remembering Neil's £30 debt, Klein suddenly regretted asking such an inappropriate question. Noticing Klein's regretful expression, Neil replied casually, unbothered. He explained that his home was often filled with magical rituals and material research, making it impossible to hire ordinary people as cooks or servants. Instead, he hired someone to clean periodically. Hearing Neil's response, Klein muttered to himself that he never practiced mystical things at home, so he hadn't thought about having to hide from others' prying eyes. Of course, Klein was mocking himself because, in truth, he had indeed tried mystical rituals at home a few times. After that, Klein and old Neil took a carriage to return to Zutland. As soon as they got off, Neil suddenly spotted something and rushed forward like an energetic young man. Chasing after him, Klein found Neil holding a leather wallet. What made the wallet valuable was the numerous banknotes inside. They were golden pounds with a gray background and black patterns, at least over 20 notes. Neil quickly opened the wallet without hesitation and began counting the money. After finishing, Neil laughed joyfully and said, £10 notes, with the image of William I, also known as the founder and the protector. There were also £5 and £1 notes, and the total value amounted to around £300. Faced with this enormous sum that would take him 10 years of hard work to save up, Klein felt dizzy. He assumed the owner of this wallet was certainly not an ordinary person. Contrary to Klein's anxious and slightly panicked demeanor, old Neil appeared completely calm, saying, "Let's wait here for a bit, I think the owner will soon return to look for it. This isn't the kind of money anyone can easily ignore." Hearing this, Klein silently breathed a sigh of relief and gained a newfound respect for Neil's moral integrity. This was because Klein had previously worried that Neil might use the excuse of a gift from the goddess to take the money and pay off his debt. As a result, Klein had been anxious, not knowing how to tactfully advise Neil against doing so. However, through Neil's upright actions, Klein understood the maxim of beyonders who chose the mystery prior pathway: do what you will, but do no harm. Klein and old Neil stood by the roadside, waiting for the wallet's owner. They hadn't waited for a minute when a luxurious four-wheeled carriage approached, bearing a light blue emblem of a dove with outstretched wings. The carriage stopped, and a middle-aged man dressed in a black suit with a matching bow tie got out, looking at the leather wallet. The butler then politely greeted Klein and Neil and said, "This is my master's wallet." However, Neil did not immediately return the wallet to the middle-aged man. He first asked the man to state the exact amount of money in the wallet to avoid any potential impersonators trying to profit from the situation. Hearing this, the butler explained that he was merely the butler and did not know the precise amount of money inside. Therefore, he requested permission to ask his master and relay the answer to Neil. Naturally, Neil did not object and patiently waited while the butler went into the carriage to consult with the mysterious master. The butler soon returned and said the wallet contained a little over £300. Hearing the correct amount, old Neil returned the wallet to the man. The butler then carefully counted the money, and to Neil's surprise, he took out 3 £10 notes and handed them to Neil as a gesture of sincere gratitude. The butler explained that his master, Baron William, greatly admired the honesty and integrity of Neil and Klein. Upon hearing the name Baron William, Klein immediately recalled the man who founded the William Trust Company, which provided affordable housing for the lowest working class. William was the nobleman whom Benson both respected and considered somewhat impractical, something Klein had previously heard about. After receiving the reward, Klein and old Neil quickly departed. Along the way, Neil was overjoyed because the goddess had finally answered the magical ritual he had performed to cancel his £30 debt. In light of this miraculous event, Klein jokingly asked why Neil hadn't requested more money. Neil reminded him that greed had no place in magical rituals, emphasizing that moderation was essential for a mystery prior's longevity. Far away from Zutland, in the luxurious and splendid mansion in the Hillston district of Backlund, a grand party was taking place, gathering numerous nobles and high-ranking individuals from the Kingdom of Loan. As people danced, dined, and engaged in conversations, Audrey Hall continuously observed their every move. She realized that she had truly become a genuine spectator. Details that had previously escaped her attention now appeared vividly as if she were watching a play with various characters performing their roles. For instance, the son of Count Wolf, who was talking to the daughter of Viscount Conrad, had a habit of swinging his arm to emphasize his points. The more he swung his arm, the less trustworthy his words became, a conclusion that had been proven true time and again. He always elevated himself while belittling others, but he struggled to hide his guilt, which was evident in his speech and body language. Then there was Lady Della, who constantly covered her mouth with her left hand when she laughed, though she was showing off the pure blue gemstone on her left hand. Lady Della's husband, Duke Negan, was discussing current affairs with a group of conservative nobles not far away. Since the beginning of the party, he had only once actively sought out his wife with his gaze. They hardly looked each other in the eye. Perhaps they didn't love each other as much as they pretended. Bored by the incredibly fake displays of the aristocracy, Audrey Hall looked toward the balcony. However, she was startled to discover her pet dog, Susie, hiding there and staring back at her. Seeing Susie's posture, Audrey Hall was suddenly pulled out of the spectator role she had been playing since the beginning. In stark contrast to the lively, extravagant scene of the lone aristocratic party, far out at sea, a solitary ship sailed amidst a storm of wild winds and tempests. Despite no one steering the ship, it continued its journey without any hindrance. On board, Alger Wilson stood on the deck, observing everything that was unfolding. One of his subordinates approached him and asked, "Bishop, what is the goal of our expedition this time?" Alger Wilson replied that their mission was to capture a listener from the Aurora Order. Coincidentally, or perhaps not, somewhere else on the ocean, the winds began to calm, and a thick fog spread across the waters. On a strange, smoke-scented sailing ship, a young boy, around 8 or 9 years old, with blonde hair, stood trembling as he watched the pirates brawl and quarrel chaotically. The boy turned to look at a man dressed in a black cloak standing in the shadows and timidly asked, "Father, where are we going?" The man, whom the boy had only met 5 days earlier but now addressed as the father, claimed to be an adventurer. If it hadn't been for the oil painting left behind by his mother, proving that this man was indeed his father, the boy would never have left his homeland to travel to this unknown destination. The man standing in the shadows looked down at his son and said softly, explaining he was taking him to a sacred land where the Creator once dwelled. Hearing this, Jack asked curiously if this was the land of the gods, as he had heard that only those blessed by the divine could enter such a place. These were lessons his mother had taught him, and Jack remembered them vividly. The man standing in the darkness had sharply defined facial features as if chiseled by the hands of a master sculptor. He lifted a hand to his ear, as if listening, then responded in a dreamy, almost delirious tone. He explained that mortal was a flawed concept, as the Creator's presence infused every living being with divinity. When this divinity reached a certain level, it could transform into an angel, and the 7 demigods were simply powerful angels themselves. After hearing his father's explanation, Jack questioned him, recalling how his mother had said that the Creator, after making the world, had dispersed into all things and no longer existed. However, in stark contrast to his earlier calm demeanor, Jack's father suddenly became frenzied and shouted, "They're lying." At the same time in Zutland, after having lunch with old Neil and receiving a promise from him to visit the black market next time, Klein returned to the Blackthorn Security Company. Klein planned to use his remaining free time to head to the Divination Club and continue his work as a seer, but just then, Captain Dunn appeared. Klein greeted him and inquired about the progress of the mission to track down the Antigonos family's journal. Dunn explained that he had confirmed through multiple sources that Ray Bieber held the journal, though he had since vanished. He had alerted Nighthawks units to monitor ports and train stations closely and, by late yesterday, had sent portrait sketches to be published in major newspapers to aid in Bieber's identification. Hearing about Dunn Smith's efforts, Klein silently lamented how much easier it would be to locate a suspect if they had phones, fax machines, and data identification systems like those on Earth. However, Klein knew this was just wishful thinking, as he had no idea how such modern devices worked, let alone how to create them. He only knew how to use them. While Klein was lost in thought, Dunn mentioned his name, pointing out that Klein had played a significant role in tracking down the lost journal. However, Dunn added that there was still one more step to confirm. He had sent a telegram to the Backlund Diocese requesting someone to escort sealed artifact 2-049 to them. This dangerous object, once belonging to the Antigonos family, could help them confirm whether Ray Bieber was a descendant of the family. Curious, Klein wanted to ask what kind of sealed artifact Dunn had mentioned, its special abilities, and the nature of its dangers, but he quickly remembered that his clearance level was too low to learn such sensitive information, so he gave up on asking. It seemed that Dunn was also considering whether Klein had met the criteria to become a full member of the Nighthawks. In reality, if Klein had chosen the sleepless potion, he would already be an official member of the Nighthawks and entitled to the privileges that came with such a position. Unable to hold back, Dunn remarked candidly that he didn't understand Klein's choice of seer. While the corpse collector role might not appeal, he questioned why Klein hadn't chosen the powerful spirit medium, especially after seeing Daly's abilities firsthand. Or, he suggested, Klein could have chosen Mystery Prior, noting that, with old Neil as a guide, the risk of losing control was minimal. In response to Captain Dunn's questions, Klein offered a seemingly honest explanation. He said he chose Seer because, like Mystery Prior, it was a supportive role that avoided confrontation with dangerous enemies. However, he admitted he'd been deterred from Mystery Prior by the warnings from Dunn and old Neil about the terrifying consequences that often accompanied curiosity in the occult, something he, as an inexperienced student, naturally feared. Klein's reasonable response eased Dunn's doubts, and he accepted it as if it had always been the right course of action. Dunn then assigned Klein the task of patrolling the areas around Welch's house and Iron Cross Street to sense the presence of the Antigonos family's journal. Once Klein detected its location, the Nighthawks would handle the rest. After being given his mission, Klein politely requested to leave, as his workday was over. However, before Klein departed, Dunn reminded him to practice his shooting skills regularly. Although seers played a supportive role, having defensive capabilities could be of great help in case of emergencies. Dunn continued to give Klein advice before finally allowing him to leave.